Lovely to see you, to have you here. This is the session where David and I get together for a little chat about anything that's come to light through our work on sovereign leadership during the week, and in particular through our group sessions on sovereign dialogue.
Mm.
So it's things we've observed, common themes that are coming out, anything that's been that's come up for us that we want to explore more deeply, or that might be a teaching point, or an opportunity to explore sovereign leadership more deeply in any way. We bring it here and we have a just basically have a natter about it. We enjoy it. We hope you enjoy it too.
Yeah.
So this week we kind of had a little bit of a pre-meeting, and we've identified some of the ideas that came through. Um, and it's quite a varied bunch today. It feels like it's not, sometimes what we get is very cohesive, and today it feels like there is just some quite interesting little observations that came out through the session. So I don't know if you want to kick off, David, with any particular starting points that jumped out for you.
Yeah. So last week we didn't do a live session because you and I were both in Cornwall together, actually in person,
In body, it's
in
amazing.
body, for the first time in ages and ages and ages. And we were at a conference called Anthropy that was being run at the Eden Project. And one of the themes that we were quite involved with, obviously because your husband Thurston was involved with it, is this idea of eldering. Um, and um, and it's something that I'm also really, really interested in as well. And the reason that I'm interested in it is not because I necessarily feel like I am an elder, um, but that there's something about sovereignty, there's something about sovereign leadership that I think there are patterns and habits and ways of being that sovereign leadership can set up in us relatively early on in our lives, de depending on, of course, when we come to these practices. But when we do come to these practices, they set up a way of being in the world that as we get older and we move towards our eldering years, that we very naturally and organically evolve into the elder that we're kind of destined to become if we're lucky enough to get to older age. Um, and I think that there's something really inspiring about this notion, like what was being addressed at the anthropy sessions that we went to. What was being addressed was this idea that we don't necessarily have that many elder role models to follow that feel inspiring and that can help us to create the future that we want for ourselves as a humanity, kind of going forward over the next sort of 40, 50, 60 years and beyond. And that, so what they were saying was, as instead of having those role models, to be able to create some kind of an approximation that we can build on over generations. And what what kind of came up in the conversations that I was having was in for me in following that sovereign leadership, the practices of sovereign leadership and practicing being that sovereign leader in the world. I find myself addressing a lot of the issues that have me play small and to remain sort of immature and emotionally limited, and that I feel myself expanding. I feel myself growing into this version of myself that will be ready for elderhood if and when the time ever comes. So I found that as a concept really, really interesting, and that we could start that process as children, right? So there's no particular point at which that journey starts, but
Mm,
that once we start that journey, that there is almost like this inevitable path that starts to open up in front of us,
mm,
whether we get to that age or not, whether we get to that place in our lives or not, is in a way, it's kind of not as important as the idea that we're on that path in the first place.
nice. Yes. Yeah. y- It's not so much getting to the point where you put elder on as a sign on your door for people to come knocking.
Yeah. And certainly not
Although,
on your LinkedIn profile. Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Um, although that would be cool, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
I, w- I get quite interested by, well, two things there. One is that process and how quickly it can start, because in running a training, I did a retreat called the Elder Invocation
Mm,
with Thurston and with his business partner Anthony, which was great, although I say it myself, really great training. But one of the question was what was the first time you identified yourself as a potential elder?
mm,
And what was quite startling was, for me, it was when I was 17. And I was walking across the wreck of my village, and in my happy, skippity, totally oblivious teenage self.
mm.
And there were two little girls playing, and one of them said, "Ask that lady over there." And I was like, "Who's the lady?"
Yeah.
And it was the first time I realized I was reaching an age of authority for
Mm,
following generations.
yeah.
Clueless myself, totally. I was like, well, I wouldn't if I were you, but to be fair, I probably have got a bit more of a clue than you two, so maybe you should.
Yeah.
But that was the first time, and I remember it so clearly.
Mm,
And when we were talking about it, I was like, well, yeah, that was the first time I retrospectively now
mm.
identify that I was perceived in some sort of an elder role.
Yes.
Obviously not the elder, but an older elder.
Yeah. Yeah. I know what you mean.
um, because one of the it was interesting in the session that Thurston and Sam ran at Anthropy. One of the principles they have about being an elder is that you don't choose to be an elder, you get called
Mm,
to be an elder
yeah.
because other people see that potential in you, want some sort of support from you,
Hmm.
maybe younger people or other older people kind of go, come on, you've got an opportunity here
Yeah.
to support in some way. And
Mm,
I think it is a, I don't know, maybe my self-determinism goes a little bit extreme, because I kind of I see that I could call myself into elder being an elder, at least to make myself available.
mm,
It's not that I then have to ram myself down anybody's throat and say, let me tell you what I get about this, or hold, you know, let me hold or be a bridge between what used to be and what now is for you to learn from, or
mm,
not throw the baby out with the bathwater, or whatever it is. But um, it's in every time we've done any work on this, the room does seem to feel the need and a lack for elders in our society.
yeah.
So it does feel like there's a great opportunity here for us as I trundle towards 60. I know I'm an elder to some people in my life. I don't see myself as an elder so much in our business model, or because I still see myself as a leader and an active business leader in that role. But certainly there are people in my life who I know see me as an elder, as
Mhm.
somebody they come to reflect, to help them hold a line, to throw ideas around and feel they won't be judged, and
Mm,
some of those qualities that you would hope to get from an elder.
mm, mm.
I have also, in my mind, started calling it old age shenanigans rather than being an elder as well, because I have a little bit of an aversion to anything getting too
Formal and
solemn.
rigid, and yeah, lacks a certain gravitas though. But yes, I get what you're saying. Yeah,
Yes,
get what you're saying.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yes. Yay to not having gravitas and well, again, we noticed that when we were putting together the event, and I started up a little Pinterest page for us to have some images, and like there were lots of kind of solemn old people sitting under trees that were populated in there by other. Mine was all old ladies chewing gum and on skateboards. So,
right.
you
Okay.
know, and kicking up their heels. So, and I
Well,
think there's something
there is that
important
sort
in.
of playfulness, isn't there? And there is that
Yes,
irreverence that
yes,
comes with elderhood that I think is really um really interesting. So so I've always been a really big fan of Star Wars.
yes,
And one of my big learning moments for me was in The Empire Strikes Back. So this is the first film where you meet Yoda in
yeah,
the original three series. And Luke Skywalker goes to the planet that Yoda is in to be taught by the great Jedi Master, right? And Yoda appears, and uh, Yoda acts like the fool,
yeah,
and but he says to Luke Skywalker, "Look, I know, like Yoda, you're looking for Yoda. Follow me. I'll take you to him."
yeah,
Right. So the next scene is in Yoda's house, and they continue the conversation. And it's within that conversation that suddenly Luke Skywalker realizes that this little green fella that he's just bumped into by accident is actually the Yoda that he's looking for.
mm,
And for years, I was like, why does Yoda behave that way? And my conclusion from that has been, and I don't know if this is true, but it makes a lot of sense to me, and I've spoken to a lot of people about it. It's like Luke Skywalker would have had a very, very clear idea of what a Jedi Master would look like. And
yes,
whatever that was, it wasn't a little 2 foot tall green alien with big ears.
yeah,
Yeah.
and a funny
So,
speech pattern.
and a very, very, very funny way of speaking. Yeah. So, so there was no point in Yoda trying to convince him that he was Yoda. He had to realize it from himself. And then there's this beautiful moment, right, where Yoda turns around when Luke Skywalker realizes who he is, and suddenly, he's that little bit taller, and he becomes very, very, very serious, very, very clear, very, very focused, and starts telling Luke Skywalker kind of like just how it is, you know.
Yeah, this is how it is.
Um, and for me, it's just such a powerful thing that what an elder can do is they can play the fool, and they can be you know, the solemn um, speaker, speaker to truth.
Yeah,
Yeah. What was it? Speaking truth to power. They can be that, and they can do that and flip it one way or the other, in an instant. Um, yeah. So that for me, that was kind of like my first experience of what an elder would be. And I remember watching that film for the first time when I was 7 or 8 years old, and just knowing that I had to meet someone like that in my life.
yeah, yeah,
Very, 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 very profound moment for me. Mm.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. And it's such a valuable function.
Mm.
It and we are missing it. We don't see our older generations as having that resource, and they often don't see themselves in that role, and so
No.
it is there is a shift that needs to happen, that has to be purposeful. And I know Sam, who did the training with Thurston, he's busy in partnership with many others writing a manifesto
Mm.
for elders, which and I think, and we're offering trainings, and it's, and the interest it gets just tells me how much people want it,
Yes.
and what a gap that is, and therefore what a gap that is as we age, because I want my life to continue to have meaning and to continue to be um, of value and of interest
Mm,
to myself and to others without it necessarily being as active as it was when I was 30, 40.
mm,
And so, and that's how that progression works really for being an elder, is that you're still a valuable part of your community. You've still got a lot to offer, and you're an ongoing resource to the people around you,
yeah.
but without having to expend all that active energy that really you've bit over by now.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Um,
So I was really so what I kind of walked away from in those sessions was this very clear message that, for me at least, that sovereign leadership is this kind of, the practices of that point us or inevitably take us along that path.
yeah.
And then this week, one of our participants used this expression, certifying old age.
Mm,
Um, and what I took her to mean by that was this idea that, that old age is valid and it's useful and it has purpose. And it's not about doing things the way you did things when you were younger. There are so many people that I meet that want to recapture the energy and the vitality and the of their youth. And I'm really clear that it's like, why would I want to relive the vitality and energy of my youth? It was exhausting, absolutely exhausting, and that doesn't mean that I don't want, excitement and energy in my older years, but there's a kind of an intelligence to it and a wisdom to it that means that I can move through life with more ease and not
yeah.
be, pushing and driving and resisting and, putting all of this way more effort in than is really necessary to be able to move mountains.
Yeah. And I love that expression as well, in that sense of exploring what it means for her and getting as good at that as she has got at other aspects of her professional life that have been certified in the past, or
Mm,
that she trains in,
hmm
but choosing to apply that to her natural aging process. I really like that sense of, yeah, my I realize that I've got a job now,
mm,
which is to explore my old age and how I want it to be, and then tailor it to that, to have it, to make it. Um,
absolutely.
Very purposeful.
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah. So
Mm,
one of the other themes that came up for us this week that I've found really interesting is the different ways things come to people.
hmm
So, for example, this week we've been exploring the embodied setup that we used for the sovereign leadership. The sovereign dialogue was using the element of water and embodying the element of water, and
mm,
it was so interesting to then both see on the screen, but then also hear from people how different their experience of that was, and
yes.
where it took them, being just so wide and varied. And it was a real reminder of just how rich human imagination is and human experience, and how different the influences are on us of this moment in time, or what's happening to us, because we had just everything from people seeing it as connecting, to other people seeing it as a stillness, to other people seeing it as kind of a kind of
Mm,
a restful um space, and then beautiful symbol of the whale that came up for some person, and that whale having all these different aspects that to her spoke of what sovereignty means to her, which I
yeah,
just thought was beautiful. The words sovereign, power, protection, agency, and truth
yeah, yeah.
that came through this beautiful whale symbol.
Mm,
um and I loved that, because for me it was that affirmation and that confidence boost of one of our participants having a relation that their own relationship with sovereign leadership
mm,
that comes to her regularly in this form
yeah,
of a whale,
mm,
um,
mm,
as a beautifully sovereign animal.
yeah,
Um,
absolutely.
I mean, all that we're all sovereign, all animals are sovereign, but there is something that majesty of whales being
Yeah.
really beautiful in this context.
Mm,
So yeah, it was both encouraging, but also just felt, our theme this season being it's all in you.
mm,
And and if you're following what's in you, it means you go your own way. And that way will be very different to the person next to you's way and the person next to you's way. And so suddenly life, instead of being this monochrome, this is how you do it, five
mm.
steps, AI'd into neutrality,
Yes.
kind of um route march that we're
Yep.
all on, being
Hmm.
this these meandering, connecting, crossing pathways, one of which is jungle, which is somebody punting down a river, one of which is a hike up a hill, and one of which is, lying on a beach in the tropics,
Yeah.
kind of thing. And it can
Mm.
be all of those and many, many others that I can't even get close to connecting with because it's not my imagination, it's not my sovereignty, it's not my relationship with what I'm exploring.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. One of the themes that's also emerging because of this event that we're going to be going to in May, this seeds gathering, um, is also this theme of connecting deeply. Well, it's also part of the sovereign dialogue process as well, but this thing of connecting deeply with our inner wisdom and being able to stay connected to that no matter what is happening outside and like
Mhm.
externally. And the experience that I shared with you was going to this conference at the Eden Project in Anthropy and being so excited and so inspired that I realized that that had actually taken me away from my center.
Mm,
So that I was kind of like, oh, well, well, I could do this and I could do that. And that's not to say that the event wasn't wonderful and that the inspiration isn't important and that the energy in the room wasn't really valuable. But if I allow that, all of that to unseat me from my throne, to sort of use the sovereign metaphor, extend it a little bit, then really it's not serving me as fully as it could.
mm,
And I think that there's something really, it's a theme that kind of keeps presenting itself, but I think it's a theme that is really alive for a lot of people once they begin to get the awareness that yes, there is this center and that there are the big events, but also the relatively small events actually that can unseat us from our throne.
mm,
Um, and I've been doing some writing this afternoon about those subtle moments, and often, sometimes they're huge, right? But more often, day to day, they're these subtle moments where we, for example, have a sense of discomfort about our fear of rejection. And rather than sit with that feeling of discomfort, we just hop over it and end up just behaving out of our patterns and habits. Whereas if we can slow down when we feel that discomfort and lean into the discomfort,
mm,
and so much insight comes from that that then gives us the clarity and the choice to be able to go, yeah, okay, I have this fear of rejection, as an example. I have this fear of rejection, and I'm going to choose to act anyway because I understand that that fear is, it's okay. Like, no, I'm not going to die here. And so I'm going to be able to, um, take the actions that I feel that I want and need to take to get to the goal that I want to get to. And if I get rejected, then that's okay.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And it's that ability in any circumstance to pause was what we were talking about
Yeah.
today. And that's why it has to be a practice, because
Hmm.
it's not something you pick up or get told and then, oh great, yes, I'll do that. I'll just, before I speak or before I respond or before I act, I'll just pause and take a breath and see where my impulse is coming from,
Yeah.
and whether actually, if I just put everything on hold and open the space out a little bit, whether there's something else that I could choose or do,
Mm.
or any other way I could respond that is more likely to be more creative, that isn't going to repeat your old patterns, um, and
Yeah.
get you in the same kind of trouble or lack of doing or whatever it is that you end up with all the time.
Yeah.
And that pause just being such a valuable resource. Um,
Yeah.
Having been working with it and supporting clients to use a pause as part of their daily practice, quite often I call it the golden pause, because it's
Mm.
got an inherent value in it that is very likely in many scenarios, particularly when it's applied in a business relationship, could save you money or lead you to money.
Absolutely.
Um,
Mm.
and certainly, anyway, lead you to being more settled, to experiencing things more, to being
Hmm.
more present, which is particularly for you at the conference, that feeling of just not being there, not being
Mm.
present because you're in the excitement and you know the
Yeah.
the reaction to it, rather than your real relationship with it,
Yeah.
where you can make different choices and where you can hear the spark of possibilities. Like at one point in the event, and it was on the last day, and I was very tired, and it had been people for 3 days. It's
Mm.
a very full on event. There are so many sessions in each that you can choose from, and they're good quality. Um, so there are choices to be made, and at one point I was just going to go to one that I thought was quite important with Thurston, and felt quite nice because I'd be going with Thurston and feeling a bit tired. It was nice to be with my husband, and we just met Graham, in a friend of ours, in the connecting
Hmm.
between the two biomes. And he said, oh yeah, I'm going to the one about plant medicine. And I'd forgotten that I'd seen that and had been really interested in it. I was like, and luckily I was switched on enough to go, oh, I really wanted to go to that. Oh my goodness, it was so interesting.
Mm.
And there was so much work going on with um, hallucinogenic drugs and trials and
Mm.
studies,
Yeah.
that I hadn't been aware of. A lot of it happening in Cornwall, and I was just like, I was so grateful that I had
Mm.
A, met him, and B, listened, so
Yes.
that I went to the session that I'd really wanted to. That was one of the best sessions for me of the whole event.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Mm,
Fantastic.
yeah,
Mm. Mm.
yeah, exactly.
Mm.
Actually, and that takes us to one of the last points, which is that resonance of truth.
Hmm.
Because in one of our conversations, I said something along the lines of truth. Um,
Truth has a sovereignty and resonance is the
yeah,
thing that I wrote
truth
down
has a
when you spoke.
sovereignty and a resonance.
Yeah.
And it's what I've worked to for many years now, that sense that if you can clear the space enough, and then you hear something and it has a slightly tangible feel, slightly chewy kind of, there's just something that goes, yeah,
Hmm.
that resonates, that feels true in
Mm.
some way for me. And and that's exactly what I experienced with Graham, because as soon as he mentioned it, I was like, yes, that's the one I need to say yes to. There was a truth in it for
Mm.
me that 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 cut through my sense. I think the other one was much more work based or leadership based, or something that I thought might be valuable for
Yes.
someone who's promoting sovereign leadership. Or, um, And so I think one of that quality of truth, it's a tricky one in our world of truth social,
Mm-hmm.
which for me is anything but. Um, and in a world where increasingly, yeah, now here's something that really shocked me. Ipsos have a big presence at Anthropy,
Mm-hmm.
and they come with armed with masses of amazing information from all their deep studies.
Mm.
And at
For those
one
people that don't know it, Ipsos is they do um oh,
polling, and
polling. Yeah, that's right. Yeah. So they ask people questions and yeah, so they've got this whole business that
yeah,
revolves
they're a
around it.
research company, and they do ongoing
Yeah.
yearly studies into things, so they see patterns and things changing. And one of the sessions, there was somebody from Ipsos, and they were talking about fake news.
Mm.
I mean, the whole audience, I think our jaws did a collective drop when they said that, I think it was 42%, it was certainly over 40% of people, if the fake news that is being shared supports their thing, the thing they're passionate about, they approve of it. They support it.
Wow.
Over 40% of people are
Mm.
happy for people to lie if it's in support of the thing that they want promoted or furthered.
Wow.
And you could see the whole room kind of went, oh,
Mm.
God.
Mm.
And so for me, this conversation we've had about truth, and truth that isn't, like, really isn't biased, because you've done the clearing out of your biases. In
Yeah.
order to hear that sort of truth, you need to have that. You need to have paused. You need to be free of the inherent bias that we all carry around with us, and that is our starting point in any moment.
Mm-hmm.
Um, or to hear it and then be able to reflectively do that, to check in with how true does that sound, and does that sound like the right approach for me, or the thing that really resonates
Mm-hmm.
is the language I often use for it. And it's such an important distinction for us in our world today,
Mm.
and it's so little followed. It's a precious skill, um, that I want to, wave from the rooftops and say, this is available to you people. You don't have to be a victim to the lies and the falsehoods that are being
Mm.
promoted as a daily part of our political discourse today.
Yeah.
There are methodologies that are within you that can be fairly easily learned, that
Mm.
mean you can just separate out from that, because quite often what you get in those moments is, this means nothing to me, because
Mm-hmm.
I'll get very riled about that sort of information when I know it's untrue and it's not. I'll go into outrage and how very dare they, and oh my God, our society, and that's taking me down a road that
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah.
healthy or helpful or creative for me.
Mm.
So when I'm in that ability to kind of listen for truth, often the truth is, ignore that, because it's
Mm.
not your agenda. It's not
Yeah.
doing anything for you.
Mm.
Just separate and get into your thing, get into your lane.
Mm. Yeah. I'm really reminded of in the book Feel the Fear and Do It Anyway.
Hmm.
Can't remember the name of the woman that wrote the book, but there's an exercise that she describes that she does in her live workshops where she gets a volunteer to put their arm out in front of them. And what she'll do is she'll put her hand on theirs and try and push their arm down.
Hmm.
So as just as a sort of a, a starting point, right, to get a sense of it. And then she'll ask them to say to themselves something that they know is blatantly untrue and repeat it to themselves and feel the dissonance of that
Hmm.
And then she'll ask them to put their hand out, and she'll put her hand on top, and she'll push their arm down, and it will be so much easier for her to do it.
Mm.
And then she asks them to say something that they know is true, right? Even like my name is David or whatever it is, but you really feel it's true. And then when they put their arm out and she puts her hand on and she tries to push their arm down, their arm is infinitely stronger than the baseline
Mm.
time that she did it. And so that for me, that really speaks to this idea that, truth is an embodied thing. Ethics, integrity,
Mm.
sovereignty, resonance, these things are embodied. They make us, they they help us tap into our strength and our power and our authority. And I think that, that as a physical demonstration, I think is just so powerful. For
You can do it. You can do it with your fingers. So
mm,
if you bring together your pointy finger and your thumb,
mm,
and then you put two fingers in there and try and open it.
mm,
So your job is to open your fingers.
yeah,
So if I say, okay, my name is Thea, I'm I'm putting a lot of pressure. I'm
mm,
actually straining here,
mm,
and that and I'm not even feeling that.
mm,
And then if I say, uh, my name is Georgia,
mm,
just opens like a trap.
yeah,
It is fascinating,
yeah, yeah, yeah,
absolutely fascinating.
exactly, exactly, yeah,
Yeah. And I like you say that as evidence of there being some form of embodied resonance with truth is
yes,
there's something really reassuring about it.
absolutely, absolutely. And we're not really talking about the the kind of the absolute truth of what is said on this post, or it's not so much that we're talking about, right? We're much more talking about,
Yeah, it's
is
not
this
fact
something that I
checking.
really want to be paying attention to? Does
Mm.
this serve me in some way, shape, or form? And I think that, just that feels like an important distinction to highlight.
Yeah, and it's to do with decision making as well, which is the
Mm.
masterclass that we're going to be doing for the seeds community, is that
Yeah.
sense of bringing your decision making into that place where you can develop a real confidence in your ability to make decisions that are true to you,
Mm.
that further your true agendas, your leadership, your wisdom, your path. Um, and getting a sense of that, and sometimes it is just a bit of experience,
Mm.
because sometimes sometimes we will just get it a bit wrong, and
Yeah.
that's life.
Mm.
But the more you do it, the more you feel it, and you start to feel it in your body, and you go, yeah, that it's just got the expression that rings true.
Yeah.
It's like it rings true because it's like in our bodies.
Yeah, nice. Yeah, I love that. Good.
Okay, I think that's me complete. Have you got anything else you
No, that feels like a wrap. So we're going into Easter. So or at least, well, anyway, Easter in the UK. I'm not quite sure whether um Russian Orthodox, Greek Orthodox Easter is different
Yeah,
from.
they might have different
Anyway, I
dates.
I won't go into that. Anyway, so Merry Easter, everybody. We're back for Sovereign Dialogue on Tuesday the 7th at 7 p.m. and Thursday the 9th at 8 a.m. UK time. And we hope to see some or all of you then.
We'll
Thank you
put
very
a
much.
link to register in the chat in case you
Yeah, in the stuff below.
in
Good.
case you haven't
Go
registered.
well, and thanks, Thea. See you next time.
Thank you.